Good morning. So I've had this narrative repeated to me a couple times recently, this idea that our ancestors or people in ancient times, hunter-gatherers, tribal people, only lived to be 30. And this narrative comes from a statistical construct called LEB, or life expectancy at birth. And basically, by calculating infant mortality from birth through death, it comes up with this average or mean that brings the life expectancy down to like 30 or 20 or 40 or whatever, whatever it is. But it makes it seem like nobody lived past 30. All our ancestors had this horrible life. And there's this other guy named Hobbes, and he wrote some books, and he said that life outside of civilization, life in nature, he coined the phrase solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And so that phrase stuck, and it went along with this narrative that we all died at 30, or life was so hard that we never made it past 30. And the reality is that anyone who survived childhood back in the day, tribal people, even hunter-gatherers today, they often live the same age as we do. Nothing has changed. There's no medical miracle in society or modern medicine that has extended the lifespan. We live the same. It's just when the statistical thing is done, it seems it's like a trick. It's basically a lie, and it is done so, even though it's technically accurate. It's a trick to forward a narrative. That's the whole point of it. Like, the only point to mislead people like that is if you have some narrative you're pushing and you need some smoke and mirrors to further the agenda or whatever the narrative is. And so for me, one of the easiest ways to kind of see through the narrative is to look at the photographic evidence that we have of people who still live in hunter-gatherers or tribes and so here's a photo of a Rabari man, and he looks well over 30 to me. And then here another Rabari tribe woman, and she looks well over 30 to me. And then a picture from Hadza, one of the hunter-gatherer tribes that are still intact today, and she looks well over 30. And then here's a hunter-gatherer man, and he again looks well over 30. And then here's a picture of the Sami people. And I suppose if I had a way, I could trace my ancestry back to these folks. But they're one of the last indigenous peoples of Europe. And the two guys on the left here, to me, they look well over 30. Then here's a picture of the Inuits, and the woman on the far left looks well over 30. The woman in the middle could be about 30. And so just for me looking at this, it helps me dispel this idea that everyone died at 30 and that life was short and brutish and harsh and all that. And then also I looked up a list of Native American leaders, and what came up was the Indian Wars. I remember hearing about chiefs and famous Native Americans that lived to be like 100, and so I was like, I looked it up, like how old did they live? And so here are some of the names and some of the ages. And Black Elk lived to be 87, Black Hawk 71, Black Kettle 65, Blue Jacket 67, Billy Bowlegs 49, Joseph Brant 64. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but Bukongahela's 85, Lonehorn 87, Cochise 59, Geronimo, one of the most famous, 80, Chief Joseph 64, Rain in the Face 70, Red Cloud 87, Sakayeng Waratan 94. Now a lot of these people lived longer than my grandparents on both sides, so it's and so for myself, I tie this information and this idea of the narrative and the statistical construct to try to push it into current events, into the COVID and the numbers that have been on TV. And the one I saw a lot was cases or people who tested positive for COVID. And I'm like, why is that important? Like, what does that number mean? And I have no idea what cases were for the flu or pneumonia or any other disease in the previous years. I'm 48 and I have no clue. I didn't track something like that. Like, why would I? I don't. It's it's like, to me, a more like honest way, if we're trying to like really compare previous years to current years, would be how many people died in 2020. Is the total number of people that died higher than previous years? If that was the case, then I'd be like, oh man, there is something going on here that's crazy. Like, all these people are dying that don't normally die. Like, what's going on? And so when they're pushing case numbers, to me, it seems like that's a number that's going to increase, like, especially if you chart it over time of total, or even total deaths, like from start to, ongoing. That number is only going to increase no matter what it is. So like those two numbers are designed to scare people and inflate and make it sound like something is growing and building and getting bigger and bigger. And like a more honest number would be, say, okay, in the previous 50 years, here's kind of how many people died, or what the disease numbers are, and here's what it is in this year. And that would be a real fair and honest way to compare what's going on. But I didn't see that number promoted a lot. And so for me, I'm like calling shenanigans and saying that there's something fishy going on here. And the other strange statistic that I kept seeing is that the flu in 2020 was like zero. Like, nobody got the flu. Like, how, for years and years and years, I saw, get the flu vaccine, flu this, flu that, 20 to 60,000 people die every year from the flu. Well, how does that number just magically drop to zero? Is there some funny accounting going on? Are those people not being counted? Are they being recategorized to COVID or something else? To me, so I see that and it just doesn't add up. And then I look at other narratives, this live to be 30 narrative, and I'm like, okay, there's a history of pushing a phony statistic or a misleading statistic to try to sell something, and so like, it's been done before. Why wouldn't it be done again? That's the MO. That's the way it works. And so that's just the lesson that I've learned and what I've noticed. And so I hope that this is helpful, and thank you for watching.